that you may have already looked up, but I imagine a lot of people really aren't aware of.
Hang on, Doug. There we go. All right. Yes, absolutely. Before I do, though, we have lost a great human being today. Actor George Wendt, aka Norm from Cheers.
Oh my
Got a
God.
drink. Drink one down for George.
Let me pour one up. Dang.
Or pour one up. I know it's like the most left field thing that I could possibly say, but my wife and I bonded early on over watching like Cheers and Who's the Boss and stuff like that. Just hanging out, sitting on the couch, and going back and look at some of these shows. It's like this dialogue does not hold up well, but you go back and watch Cheers of all things, and it's still hilarious. Like there's a lot in there. Like it might seem dated, but it's still relevant, and it's freaking hilarious.
Absolute
so anyway,
classic.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Having said that,
And no worries.
all right. Let's see. You should have a present button. I think.
I do have
that's the one that you want.
I do have a presentation here, and
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
At any point, jump in, stop me, ask questions. We make this a nice back and forth. Now's the time to kind of ask questions. So if you see anything in the chat too that people are asking, just jump in. A lot of what I do right now, we're putting out on our website, electiontruthealliance.org. We're putting out reports, we're putting out videos. So now's the real good time for people to kind of get their questions in, and maybe we'll highlight some stuff that we've not made public yet.
You want to know how I know you're an officer?
Yeah.
Not a PowerPoint.
Let's go. What is it?
You brought a PowerPoint.
You're right.
Hey.
Planning. Listen, that's the point. We'll make this joke. So officers' jobs is to stay in the office and do the paperwork. That's the whole, it's in the title. So, and here we are. We've done the paperwork we've done the work for you. So
it's just a 45-page PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I'm sure over the next 2 hours of this PowerPoint, we'll be able to get through it.
So you guys are lucky. I used to come in with 40-page PowerPoints, 36-page PowerPoints. You get like 10 slides this time. I got people saying I can't sit 2 hours to talk about it. You get 10 slides. So here's our introduction slide. We're going to talk about some of the concerns and some of the math that we have raised to show these concerns. And we're mostly going to talk about Pennsylvania in this report. But we have released reports on the other swing states, such as Nevada, and we'll be looking at North Carolina and publishing that next. So if you're familiar, there's 7 main swing states that really change the outcome of an election. And we'll show you some of the concerns across a few of those, and then we'll look at Pennsylvania. So here's our first one. We'll make this super back and forth. I actually kind of reduced some of the follow-up slides down, but if people aren't aware of these things, this is a big deal. This is what tipped us off into actually, making this organization. For example, Jive, who is, one of the other co-founders and an expert in his fields of finance and statistics, and he's a hardcore numbers guy. He was really one of the ones that took all of this and said, there's got to be something in the data we can go look at and find. So this is what pushed us to go digging. So have you heard about the over 200 bomb threats on election day? Were you aware of that directly?
All I knew about was Georgia.
As a resident of one of the counties that had tons of bombs threatened, yes, we were very familiar.
Yeah,
it was a bit of chaos here.
Wow. So in Georgia, there was I only knew of like there was maybe 3 or something like that I knew of. I did not know. Over 200 nationwide, and I'm not sure why that wasn't the first daggone thing I heard.
Right. Yeah. Why is no one talking about this? This was a big deal, and I believe this didn't happen in the past election. This is kind of a unique thing. We did actually map it. So over 200 bomb threats, 34 of them were in Pennsylvania alone. which was why we're going to highlight Pennsylvania. There's a lot going on there. A lot of the other places, there were some in California, some in other states that aren't even swing states. What is important is these were connected to a potential Russian email domain. So for some reason, it's either Russia or someone who wanted to look like Russia sending these emails out all on election night. And it's not like you just send an email to your local county. This was a potentially targeted mass email event that requires a little bit of planning and foresight. That requires, probably a handful of people working together to pull this off. And why would you do this? So we do highlight that they closed down polling locations when these bomb threats did come in. They evacuated them. They cleared the facilities, and then some of them resumed. But a majority of the time, what we want to highlight is there's a bunch of things you could potentially do to help benefit yourself by doing these bomb threats, from breaking the chain of custody for the actual votes to just causing chaos or anything like that. So this is, in my opinion, probably one of the most concerning things, because this means you had a group of people who all sat down and decided, let's impact our elections. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for when we get into the actual concerns with how we run our elections in the US. So if you're not familiar, all 7 swing states going for one candidate is interesting. Some of the best polls, such as Ann Seltzer, really highlighted it should have been closer to 3 to 4 swing states either way at best. So this was very interesting to see all swing states go to one candidate, and then that candidate gets less than 50% of the popular vote. When you look at how elections are run, this is very difficult to pull off, and it hints at in order to really do this, you need to win in such a precise way. You need to win in only the ways that matter, and you're still getting less than 50% of the popular vote. Last time something like this happened was almost 100 years ago, I believe. I believe Ronald Reagan won something around, 49 out of 50 swing states. And even then, he didn't even win all of the, at the time, I think that was him winning all of the swing states at the time, and he had an absolute landslide. So Trump, in this case, 30 states, and he still won all 7 swing states. So that's just another weird thing that kind of tipped us off into looking at the actual data. So the 2 other little pieces we'll talk about, and then we'll jump into the math, is 70% of the U.S. uses 2 major brands of tabulation machines. We do have that outlined here. So I'm going to ask you kind of some back and forth here. How do we vote, right? Explain to me, if we use machines, how are we using machines that you know of, right? Have you seen any voting machines, or do you go in, and what's it like for you when you go in and vote?
Well, when I go in, I'm sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say that when I go in, I'm in Montgomery County, right outside Philadelphia. We go in, it's a local church. It's a little sign-in station. Find your ID, find your picture and your signature, sign off. They give you a slip. You go back, you push the slip against a little curtained around device with a little computer screen, little touch screen on it. Hit the buttons, hit cast your vote, makes a happy sound, and then you leave. And you get a sticker. All right.
So you vote on an actual machine where you're at. So
for the primaries that were held today, I actually voted by mail, but when I go in person, that's how I vote.
All right. So that's a good note. So mail-in is generally physical ballot you send in. Mm-hmm. Election day, some of the places have voting machines that you vote at, or places have the hand-marked paper, machine-marked paper ballots that then get counted by another machine. What people don't realize is voting machines, there's another machine we use. So we have voting machines, but then we have your vote counting machines, your tabulator machines. And so what we want to highlight is that 70% of the US uses 2 major brands of tabulator machines. And these 2 major brands there are major concerns cited by cybersecurity experts going back to like November 13th or earlier of potential compromise to those systems. So we're using 70% of the US. You can see all the swing states are generally covered. We see Pennsylvania for the primary brand. You see Nevada for the secondary brand. And all we're highlighting here is that if everyone's using 2 or 3 of the major voting systems, if you were to have compromised these systems, could you have changed the outcome of an election? And this is kind of an eye-opening thing, because in the beginning we thought every state runs their own elections, every state uses their own equipment. This isn't the case. There's only a few actual machine types that people are using to count their votes, and that's very important, because it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes.
So Stalin.
Yeah, Stalin. And so we'll jump right into the data and kind of the big concerns. The last one was, the 88 counties flipping one way. So that's very interesting that 88 counties flipped from the Democrat to the Republican all across the U.S. 0 counties flipped from Republican to Democrat. That doesn't really happen. Even when Ronald Reagan won with his landslide victory, 40 counties flipped from the other party. So now we'll kind of talk about Pennsylvania. And I know you're familiar being a resident of Pennsylvania, but we actually started looking at the state. The ETA has published this report. Bottom line up front here is, although you had bomb threats, we also said, hey, let's look at some of the largest counties in the state, right? The most voters. So we're going to look at Philadelphia County. That is the most heavily populated county. We're going to look at Alagany, if I said that right. That's the second largest. And then Erie County is the 5th largest. And so they do have 3 types of voting: provisional, mail-in, and election day. As you said, mail-in is by mail, and it's physical ballots. Election day can be digital or hand-marked or machine-marked paper ballots, depending on county. And then there is a provisional voting. It's so small. It's like 1% or less. So a lot of people will say, hey, Pennsylvania had all these problems, but they did audits, right? They did 2 different types of audits. They did a 2% audit, and then they did an audit of the state treasurer. And what we're going to highlight is there's quite a few ways that you could potentially not get counted or not identify issues by these audits. These audits really didn't sample the larger areas like Philadelphia well. And if we're looking at our tabulation machines, digitally speaking, there's a concern where the physical votes, if you only do 2%, you may not catch manipulation. You have to count 100% of a precinct or something. And that's generally what kicked us off here. There's one other piece, and this is something I don't know if you've heard this. I don't know if you saw this. Are you familiar with a quote on inauguration night right after the 24 election?
Oh yeah.
A certain Trump quote?
Yeah, and what was that quote about? What did he say?
I'm not going to do it justice.
Okay. I think it went along something like, and Elon Musk traveled to Pennsylvania, and he knows those vote counting computers, and we won Pennsylvania like in a landslide. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the quote. What's that?
I think he said he knows those machines or something like that.
Yeah, no, he specifically says vote counting computers in that quote.
Oh, wow.
And Pennsylvania, all in the same quote. So this was, I remember this distinctly because it was the night of the inauguration, and my every social media account I had started blowing up, and people were sending me links and clips saying he talked about the machines, and we had already been publishing some of our concerns. So I find that interesting. He says all of that about vote counting computers, and we're going to talk about the concerns that could be had from compromising vote counting computers. Wow. We'll blow through this one pretty quick. This is your down ballot analysis. You may have seen this before. This is what kind of said, hey, if you were manipulating votes, what would be a symptom of that? And a symptom is, let's say you're taking votes or deleting votes or adding in votes, the presidential race. Well, then you should see a difference between the presidential race and like the Senate race, right? You should see a lot of more votes or less votes. And that's all we're doing with this down ballot analysis. We call it drop-off voting. So drop-off votes, or bullet ballots was another term that kind of applies. And we're just showing on the left is mail-in, on the right is election day. And the 0% line here is the amount of votes each candidate's Senate partner got. Red is Trump in this case, blue is Harris. So we see mail-in. It's a bit more chaotic, but both candidates are going to sit somewhere around 1% to 2% more votes than the senator. That's normal, but we see that everywhere in unmanipulated elections. On the right is election day. This is where we're going to highlight election day, and we're going to talk about a few other people who we've reached out to and their expert opinions. Election day, we're seeing a huge lack of votes for Harris. She's getting less votes, up to, 2, 3, 4% in some places on average than her Senate candidate. And this is really strange. And we're only seeing this on election day predominantly. And then Trump is getting, a significant amount more. It's that negative amount of votes for Harris that's a red flag. Why? Let's say I was changing votes, or let's say I was just getting rid of votes. You would notice, your Senate candidate gets 50,000 votes and then you're getting 10,000 less. That's going to be really noticeable. And that's what we're starting to see, not just in Pennsylvania. We see this in other swing states too. And we're concerned that this is caused by manipulation. So this is what was one of our first analysis. And we said, okay, if this is manipulation, let's dive deeper and let's see what we can find. And in this case, this is a most recent development. Do you know who Dr. Walter Meban is? Have you heard of this gentleman?
Nope.
I have heard the name. I don't know too much about him.
Yeah.
Yet.
Here's what's important. Dr. Walter Meban, he is currently a political science and statistician at the University of Michigan. And he was funded by USAID to make a election forensics toolkit. And they hosted it on the USAID website. It is gone now. You can't get to it anymore. Their portal doesn't take you anywhere. So this gentleman is, in plain terms, the leading U.S. election fraud expert. Like, there's not a lot of people who have more experience than this gentleman. He's put out over 7 papers analyzing different elections around the world. And what's important, this gentleman, although he has shown concerns of election fraud in past elections, he's also done the opposite and put out papers saying, hey, you're wrong. There's not significant election fraud. And he did this for the 2019 Bolivian general election. And recently, he did this for the 2020 presidential election. But a caveat here is he authored that paper that said and found no credible claims of election fraud for the winning candidate. That's how his analysis works, is it looks at the winning candidate. So he didn't find any credible claims in 2020 for the winning candidate, which was Biden at the time. So this gentleman is important. So he's probably the most experienced statistician, and he has a model that can actually look at and simulate election fraud. What's even funner is we reached out to him. So as I said, he made all of this stuff. He got funded. He made a system. He made a model that can simulate election fraud. And we reached out to him and said, hey, we have concerns about Pennsylvania and these 3 counties. And so we gave him those concerns. We pointed him to that, and he did his own analysis. And we're going to highlight his analysis here because, as I said, leading U.S. election fraud expert. This is recent, and we put this, and his paper is up on our website, electiontruthalliance.org. It's the Mebban PA working paper. And his findings were matching our concerns. We did do a little bit of math prior to reaching out to him and trying to estimate how much potential manipulation there could be, and we'll show you the math here in a moment and how we did it. But his model came up with up to potentially 28,000 anomalous votes across Philadelphia, Erie, and Alagany County. And that's 24% of the state margin of victory in 3 counties alone. There's 64 other counties, I believe. So we are looking at those 64 other counties. But what is even more important is his model says the highest anomalies were focused around election day. Remember, I showed you that graph a little earlier showing election day like sticking out and how less votes Harris was getting? Yeah. So now we'll actually kind of get into our analysis and talk a little bit about our concerns. But any other questions or statements you kind of want to talk about, or what are you thinking right now? I'm curious.
I mean, I'm over here making a list of questions. So
yeah. All right. Any? Am I going too quick?
I kind of missed the 70%. It was point number 3 on the very first slide.
Were you talking about machines or?
Yeah, but of something about the machine. 24.
Yeah. If you missed this one, we'll highlight this again.
But I was wondering, I missed the significance of 70%. Not the equipment compromised, but why they're all of them using the same machine was an issue again?
Yeah. So the reason why this is an issue is because if 70% of the US is using two major brands and you were to compromise those two major brands, these are tabulation machines. These are vote counting machines. So if you were to have compromised these and be able to put malware on them or, put malicious code or impact them in real time, you could potentially change votes and change the outcome of the election across all of these places. And the swing states specifically, a lot of them are covered by these machines. That's why this is important. And as mentioned before, these machines have been highlighted to potentially have issues and compromises. The second major brand, their operating system was taken during some lawsuits, and you could do a lot with understanding how these systems work. The largest brand, some of their tabulation machines, their vote counting computers have cellular modems in them. So we're just highlighting that there are serious concerns with these machines and how we're using them. And 70% of the US is using these machines. Yeah.
So this is the question. That's what I thought. So I would wait till the end for anything else, but I remember hearing that there's no way that the machines can connect to the internet or have modems in them.
That's a good question, yeah.
And I was told that over and over in 2020, which made me say, there's no way that they could have changed it. There's no way, no, it wasn't Chinese bamboo, right? And no, it wasn't a modem because the machines aren't connected to the internet. They're not connected to the internet. No.
Yep, I am sad to say.
Now I'm hearing that they were, and it makes me feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't have been mad at the people who were saying that in 2020.
So there is some very specific things, and it's kind of why it's confusing and misleading to say they're not connected to the internet. As I said, there's two types of machines, right? There's machines you can vote on, and there's machines that count your votes. They're two different separate systems. The machines that count your votes, the machines that you do vote on, at the time, they shouldn't be connected to the internet. But they're connected to the internet before, and they're connected to the internet after. So that's kind of it doesn't matter, because as a cybersecurity expert, I don't need to have access to something in real time to have manipulated it, right? If I put malware on something, specify, hey, start doing bad things on this day and at this time, it doesn't have to be connected to the internet then, and that's a concern. And then the tabulation machines, the largest brand does have cellular modems in them, so they are connected to the internet. If you're on your phone and you have cell phone signal, are you connected to the internet? Yes, you are. So that is misleading. You bring up the excellent point of that was one of the leading arguments, saying, hey, our systems are secure. We've done our work. There's no concerns. And we're finding that there is concerns. And there was concerns in 2020 as well. So, it is interesting to find that now. And it does change your perspective on things. But I will say the 2020 concerns, as we'll highlight briefly, we're not going to talk about it in this PowerPoint, just, for the sake of time. But the ETA has published some data for 2020 election. We did the same analysis I'm going to kind of run through here, just in a slightly different way. And we find the same concerns matching in 2020 as 24. And I will highlight that the candidate and the party that is benefiting in 2020 is the same that was benefiting in 24. But mail-in ballots was a significant amount of the votes in 2020. And I'll show you as we're going to look at the data that mail-in voting almost always looks a bit more normal in 24. So, all right. Excellent question, though. That's a really good point. We get that a lot. All right. I will briefly run through just 3 or 4 more slides, and then I think we have questions, and we can go from there. We're going to show you heat map analysis. This is, in my opinion, my favorite analysis. It's super easy to understand. It's got nice visuals. And this was developed by Peter Klimek. He's a Austrian physicist. He's renowned for election forensics. He's got papers. You can go and look up his work and reproduce his work. He does the same type of statistical analysis. So we've taken his work and applied it to U.S. elections, and we'll show you that. On the left is it's an excerpt from his paper, and it's showing the visuals. We recreated the model that can make these heat maps. And what I want to highlight is for each of these, so Peter Klimek et al. And all of his co-authors they looked at Russian elections, they looked at European elections, they looked at Uganda and Africa, and Switzerland, specifically in Europe. And they're arguing that a free and fair election or a normal election looks more like a circle, looks more like a square, little dot. And any questions there? If it looks more like a circle, that's what fair should look like. And so they're finding in all of the Russian elections they looked at, it's instead of a circle, you get this comet trail up and to the right. And that's potentially caused by ballot stuffing in this case. And so you're seeing that in Russia for 2011, 2012. You see a little bit of some concern in Uganda, where instead of that circle, you're seeing a bunch of votes pushed up. And in Switzerland looks a bit more normal, to be honest. Switzerland looks pretty good out of all of them. So we're going to look at Pennsylvania. We're going to look at the 3 counties, Philadelphia, Erie, and Alagany County. But we have a few baselines to kind of get you warmed up first. So here's your baseline. It looks like this is going to be Ohio. This is 24, their state board, District 5 race. This is a nonpartisan race. That's why it's important. This isn't a Democrat versus Republican. These are independent, and it's a state board race, and there's no parties associated with these races. So this is the winning candidate, and we see that more circle, right? So we see that more fair election. Any questions here?
Sounds good.
All right. Now we're going to look at mail-in for Erie County. So mail-in, as we talked about, we're seeing that more fair circle, not seeing any up and to the right change or anything. So mail-in for Erie looks pretty normal. Now we're going to show you election day for Erie. And I'll stop here and let you guys just kind of process this for a second. Yep. Every time I get the same reaction, it's hell, and then it's so.
I think I left a stain on that on somebody's couch one time.
Oh,
yeah. So let me explain what we're looking at here and how to read this and why this matters.
What is the heat that we're looking?
Yep. So the dense, the redder, darker area is where a majority of the precincts are. So what we're doing is we're looking at the county, and we're looking at the way people voted across all the precincts. And so on the bottom axis, the x-axis, that's voter turnout. Turnout is just a measurement of, let's say, in every precinct, you have a maximum amount of people who are registered to vote. How many people actually showed up and voted? So, for example, you got like 100 registered voters in a precinct. 80 show up, you're at 80% turnout. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So all we're looking at here, and the reason why these models can show potential election fraud or manipulation, is because there should be no connection to turnout across all of these precincts and the amount of votes you're getting. It should be that more circle, because there shouldn't be any benefit to more people showing up or less people showing up on average. I know that kind of is hard to understand. It doesn't really make sense. You'd think, hey, more people, the closer you're going to get to the actual results. In this case, we're looking at every precinct in the county. And what we're seeing in this case is we're seeing that across every precinct, in precincts where more people or more votes were cast, Trump is getting a larger and larger amount of those votes. And it's causing this up and to the right change. And this matches what is seen in European elections and Russian elections for ballot stuffing. And that's the concern here. To explain this in a different way, let's say you have a precinct that has 50% turnout. And so you're at 50%, right? I have half, you have half. And I want to win. So what do? We're at 50% turnout. I add in 10% more of the voters, and they only vote for me. That's going to cause me to go up to 60%, and it's going to cause this type of shape where you're getting, as turnout grew, Trump got more votes. And this is not normal. This is potentially
the more people vote, the more circle it looks.
Well, it should be the more people who vote, and if there is no manipulation, it should be that circle. I mean, in this case, we're seeing, for whatever reason, in places of higher turnout, or as turnout had increased across all these precincts, Trump is getting more and more of those votes, which we think could be caused if you are manipulating elections. And in this case, let's say the tabulators are compromised and you're changing votes around, you're deleting votes, or you're adding in votes. What this is showing us is you're potentially adding in votes for one candidate across all of these precincts, and that would cause this. And we do have some other examples, of course. Here is Alagany, and we'll blow up the last two here. Their mail-in looks a bit more normal, but notice how stretched up it is. That's a little bit of a concern. So in this case, we're not as worried about this. We still get a more normal circular shape, but it is a little taller than we would expect. And so what we found now in our analysis and our studies is up and to the right is potentially adding in votes. Up and just up could potentially be changing votes. And you know how mail-in is, mail-in is physical votes sent in and then they're counted by the tabulation machines. Although mail-in generally looks more clean, you're still using vote counting computers to count the votes. So you could potentially get away with doing some bad things. And then we'll say Alagany again. What's interesting is even in Russian elections, you get a comet trail where a majority of the votes look more normal, and then you get that stretch up and to the right where they're changing a handful of precincts. What we're finding is we look the opposite in the US. We look like a majority of our votes could be actually changed, and it's causing this, instead of a comet trail, you're getting a comet up and to the right. So Alagany, we see the same concerns. You get a good amount of vertical spread, which could be changing votes digitally. And then you do get a little bit of rightward shift, which could be adding in votes. Any questions here?
Due to the heavy-handed stupidity of every wrong thing that gets done. Not saying that's what this is, because I'm still open-minded.
Yeah.
But how, you can't just get a bribe. You have to get the $400 million Qatar plane. Like, the heavy-handed, overtly dumb things starting to make sense with that picture right there. Like it's not well, yeah. All right, go ahead.
No, and you bring up an excellent point. And people are like, hey, in order to pull this off, like this would be ridiculous to pull off, right? Well, in reality, you only need a handful of people, and you need a lot of wealth, power, and connections to really get in and mess with these systems or the companies that run these systems. But let's be honest, if you're willing to, have people storm the Capitol so that you don't get kicked out of office, if you know you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life, what is, a little bit extra, right? If you've already done some really bad things, is it really that bad to use some money, wealth, and power to make sure that you win the next time around, or, things like that? And that's what we're highlighting here is,
another part of that is, real quick, I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Another part of that is also, you only do something like this when you know that you've proven over time that the people who actually vote for you really don't care. Like, you could actually storm the Capitol and they would say it was a vacation. Like, there's nothing that, you can be overhanded. You can go overboard. And there's a certain amount of population that would go, nah, I don't see it.
Yeah. And what sucks as well, as we've been publishing this, and to be honest, like the data doesn't lie. That's the whole point, is we're showing you the math and the numbers, and you can go do this analysis yourself. Dr. Walter Meban did his own analysis and found the same concerns we're finding. And what's important is we spent, like, as you know, right? It was the last 4 years of hearing the elections are free and fair. Our machines can't be connected to the internet, all of this, all of that. And claims of election fraud in the last 4 years kind of made it really hard to talk about this today, right? No one wants to talk about this. No one, like the news, won't talk about this. You guys, right? You independent content creators are really the only ones that are willing to step up and at least ask these questions. So we haven't had any news. We've spoken to a few people in positions of government and state and federal governments, and it's not that they're not aware or concerned of this. It's, well, for one, this is kind of hard to get your head around, right? Like, you've been told one thing for a while now. This kind of changes your worldview. And when it comes to politics, it's hard to just be like, yep, the last 4 years we were wrong. The elections are potentially compromised, but in a slightly different way. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of people dug themselves a hole that they aren't able to get themselves out of now. We're having to do the work, and us and Smart Elections and Audit USA are going around asking the hard questions, saying, "Hey, are our elections actually being run correctly?" So that's a great question. And here's your last one, and then that's the last of the heat maps in this case. And here's Philadelphia. Remember what? All right, so I'll ask questions here. What does mail-in look like to you? What are you seeing? What are you feeling here? Does that look like a circle, or are we seeing something weird?
It looks like a cock and balls, not gonna lie.
Yeah. So,
okay.
I mean, it looks like the circle at the bottom.
Yep.
The nutsack.
Comet, right? The egg sack.
Yeah, we're getting a comet trail, kind of like Russia,
right?
But the main difference is how tall it is.
Yeah.
Instead of it going up and to the right, we're getting a bit more of it being up, even in mail-in, right? Even in mail-in, we're getting a little bit of, and these are the precincts. So you're seeing precincts, although they're sitting at lower turnout, meaning, not as many people showed up to vote, you're seeing a lot of the precincts are skewing up for Trump, meaning he, for some reason, is getting a lot of votes across these precincts, even though a majority of the precincts are sitting at closer to 15% for him in mail-in. Mail-in is overwhelmingly Democrat. Everywhere we've looked, it's common that Democrats either vote by mail, or here's the thing that we talk about perspective. It's either all the Democrats vote by mail because they like mail-in and they think it's safe and it's convenient, or you're potentially not manipulating the mail-in voting. And so either way, you're getting a lot of Democratic votes in mail-in. But in this case, we're seeing it look a little wonky for Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and it's that up and down, which we said could be vote switching. Which if you have a tabulator machine and you're feeding in mail-in ballots, they're just physical ballots, and the machine's counting, a handful more for Trump, changing a few votes around, it could cause something like this. And then on the right, we see generally the same thing, actually, where a lot of the election day voting, and Philadelphia is largely more liberal, right? It's got a larger population. You get a lot of liberal population in larger cities. And we're seeing the same concerns where, although a majority of the votes is really low for Trump, 10, 15%, we're seeing a handful of those precincts are just really stretching up where Trump's getting a lot of votes for some reason. And this stands out as not really normal voting behavior. And it could be caused by changing votes around and manipulating these precincts. So, and then I think we broke this one, but that was the heat maps for you. That was the general thing. Although this is really wonky on my screen here, I think just the formatting. We do have a couple slogans, but what we really want, I love how it's stacked, is that people are asking us, we're done with the PowerPoint. People are asking us this, like, so what, they ask us, let's say we're right. Let's say there is something going on and you are changing votes around or adding in votes and you're impacting the elections. Well, we've shown you one state. So what? Is that enough to really make a difference? Well, what's important is we showed you if this is being caused by the machines, malicious code or whatever's going on, 70% of the U.S. is using these machines. And the swing states are predominantly using these machines. So if you were to change enough votes around or add in votes across all of the swing states to win those swing states, would you be able to change the outcome of the election? Absolutely. For example, in Russian elections, some of the recent elections, Putin is polling victory around 90%. This doesn't, and a lot of people who know Russia and live in Russia or have fled Russia, such as Roman Udot, he's another election expert. He was actually imprisoned for a handful of time as a political prisoner, and he got out. They're like, yeah, the people do not support Putin at the level that the votes say is happening. And so I do all of this to highlight some concerns. So if this is happening, how do we fix it? How do we do anything about it? Right? Well, the first step is we identify where's it happening at, and let's go look. Let's go check. And so that's what the ETA has been doing, is we're putting out our reports for Pennsylvania, for Nevada. We're going to drop North Carolina next. We're going to drop some of the other swing states, and we're going to look at some non-swing states too. And I'll be honest, we're seeing this almost everywhere these machines are being used, independent of swing states. We're seeing some concerns in Texas. I just got a report for Florida. So we want to get our hands on the actual votes, the physical votes, and we want to make sure that those votes match the reports we're getting told. Because if you're doing this digitally, the physical votes should show you, you know, the proof is in the paper. It should be right. It should add up, or it shouldn't. And that's where we want our audits and our investigations. So we have been raising funds to pay for the legal fees to do this. The ETA at this point, I think we're about 5-6 months old, and we've been raising funds, and we've been hiring lawyers and working with people across the U.S. in places where we've found the concerns of manipulation. I can say we may have some luck here in the future, either trying to get our hands on votes or having to actually like sue to gain access to the ballots. But once we if this happened, this has potentially happened on such a scale to change the outcome of the election that it's almost very difficult to hide this, right? You go almost anywhere we're finding these concerns, you go look at the votes, you go look at some precincts, you go look at some counties. If they're messing with things, you're going to find it pretty quickly. It's really hard to hide manipulation on this scale. So
what's the difference between what you just showed here and a official audit called by a candidate?
Yep. So in this case, this was a statistical analysis of potential election fraud. It's math, it's numbers, but it's not proof. It's evidence. It's showing anomalies and a concern. And we're just pretty much saying, hey, these analyses show that this looks like more of a machine changing things around than actual people going out and voting, but it's not physical proof. And, you know, a few things could probably cause some weirdness in a few spots. But to cause this across all of the places and all the counties we've looked, different demographics, different areas, it's not reasonable to say this is a fluke. Like, this seems systematic. And an actual audit, what they're doing after the election is they're doing like 2% of the votes in a county or whatever, multiple counties. And as I highlighted before, if you're manipulating things digitally, unless you count. Yep, go ahead.
Nope.
We lose you? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome.
It cut out for me, but I'm sorry. I see you now.
No, you're fine. All right. You asked me what's the difference between what we're doing and an audit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they do with an audit, they do 2% of the votes across multiple counties. They look at the actual votes. They go and grab 2% of the physical votes, run them through a machine or count them by hand, make sure they match the reported results on election day. Problem is, if you're changing things digitally, adding in votes digitally, like we're seeing in a lot of places, like predominantly potentially adding in votes, you're not going to catch this with a 2% audit. Why? Because you're auditing the actual votes, the physical votes. Unless you do 100% of that precinct and you're finding 20 or 40% more votes that don't exist or whatever, 2% is not going to find you anything. So that's the problem we're highlighting is digital manipulation won't show up in a hand audit unless you count the entire precinct. Because these places like Pennsylvania, they look at like 50 votes in some of these places. And then they're like, hey, these 50 votes look good, and they move on. But then they don't go to Philadelphia where a majority of the votes are and count all of those votes. So our audits aren't really great for this. You're kind of doing a spot check. And the problem is, to be honest, if you planned this out, right? If you've been sitting around thinking, how can I manipulate an election? You know how they're going to conduct their audits. You know how they're going to do it. So you're going to try and make sure that you're doing things in a way it's not going to show up or be easy to catch. And that's what we're finding is this wouldn't be easy to catch unless you did what we do, which is you go look and you pull the data and you find the places where it's happening. You're not just going to catch this in a random audit.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to say two things here. And anybody who knows my role here in Sons of Liberty will know that this they may faint when they hear me say this.
Yeah.
Let me get my smelling salts.
I don't blame the media for not showing it.
Okay.
Right. I know. Don't die. Here's the deal. The reason why I asked about the audit, you actually answered another question, which is the proof. It is, I think, as the media who has billions of dollars of research and are known as legacy media, whatever it is, it could be construed as dangerous or misleading, or it could be seen as just not the right thing to do to put this out, knowing that it's still speculation.
Right.
Okay.
Especially after the last 4 years, right?
Right. So that's that's not, is he there? Yeah, that's not my normal. That's not me normally. If you're still with us, I don't know if you'd like to come.
Yep. Sorry, I'm here.
All right. The other one is, I find it hard to see how this would have to be something that is made specifically just to try to get better and not to change anything today, right? Am I right?
You lost me a little bit there.
Okay, so we're trying to find out how to make it so that we can make elections safer for the tomorrow.
Yes.
As opposed to trying to change the results of November.
Yes, that's the thing that we highlight is the election certified. The people who were the victors are in office, in power. So what we want to do is we want to make sure upcoming elections are unmanipulated, and then we want to investigate the last elections and make sure was there manipulation or not. And as you kind of highlight, it's a fight for the future, right? Because sad news is if we're right, if there was manipulation, and you're using the machines, we're going to keep using the machines unless it's found out. And so every coming election, the midterms, the next presidential, it's all going to be the same. And if you're able to change things around, you can keep doing it.
And I was going to be done, but I'm going to ask what Rincewind asked, which is the obvious question that I should have. So what do you need? You have the forensics that say this is possible, this is strange, we see an anomaly here. What do you need to have proof?
Yeah. So what we are finding out is getting the ballots and doing an audit or doing a recount, not to change the elections, but to check and see if they're actually changing things around digitally. A lot of places won't let us do it. A lot of places legally won't let us go in. And here's the thing. They keep the physical votes for 22 months all across the U.S. So they're sitting in a ballot box in a county warehouse or something right now in every place we've highlighted, but we can't go and get them. We can't gain access to them. We've asked the counties. A lot of the counties will be like, hey, there's no legal avenue for you to just walk in and check. So we're looking at suing. We're looking at finding places that will let us.
Can she call for an audit? I mean, why? We always say, why didn't she? But can she still be the one without all of the law? Can she still be the one?
So what sucks is many states have windows for doing a recount. You only have X amount of time, so many days or so many weeks after the results to challenge, and then you pay for it and they go in and they recount. So we're well outside of any recount window for any states. And so our struggle today is, as you said, right? Like, we're going to keep trying to find proof of the past, but then let's set ourselves up for success going forward, because we get into a position going forward, election and a race turns out wonky, we get the data, we do the analysis within the window, you can go challenge, right? You can go get a recount, and you don't have to waste money recounting all of the votes. You go to the place where our data and our analysis shows they're potentially changing things around. We can tell you which precincts to look at. We can tell you which counties to look at. And that's huge, because we're finding that this wasn't really something easily done. before we stepped in and started looking at how are they doing it in Europe and doing it here. So our analysis, we just launched the dashboard, it's data.electiontruthalliance.org, where we're showing you our analysis. And we're going to teach people how to do this themselves or make a tool so that you can do it yourself. So you just need the data, and then you can be like, hey, here's some really weird places worth going and looking. And that's a huge weapon going forward for trying to make sure if there is something going on, how do you catch it, right?
What do you make of I know Trump said it. I feel like Elon said it too. Seemingly alluding before the actual election that they had a plan. I'm not sure the specific wording, but it was like a couple of days before, from what I recall.
I remember a few quotes. Yeah.
I mean, once at the New York Hitler convention, when he looked right up and said, "You guys got a plan, right? For we're gonna win this election." Who was he talking to? Was it Elon or like a senator?
I think it was
the rally.
Mike Johnson at the time.
It was Mike Johnson.
Yeah, and we have a little secret was the quote.
Yeah,
something
we
along
have
that
a little
line.
secret. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, what we're finding are, so there's a couple important things where the last 4 years, right? The election fraud claims, all of this and all of that. What I want to highlight is the work we're doing today, right? Every American should care about our elections. They should care independent. Hey, I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're independent. You should care that our elections are being run right and that your votes are counting, right? Everyone wants that. And that's why it's a conflict, is you're saying, hey, if there was stuff going on in 2020, it changed your perspective on all of the issues then. But the difference here is we want our elections to represent the American people's choices, which if they're manipulating the elections, it brings a lot of concerns that people in office are not representing the American people. But what's more important as well is this shouldn't be taboo. Right? We should be able to talk about this. We should be able to make sure that everyone's votes are counted and counted correctly. And it should be, in my opinion, and why I love your Sons of Liberty platform is because voting is the most American thing you can do. Right? Our country was founded because a bunch of pissed off people said, I'm not being represented right. I'm getting taxed. I'm getting shipped back to England to get, trialed. I'm not getting represented. So what do we do? Right? We said, hey, we'll do it ourselves. It blows my mind today that there's still people who would be happy with us just saying, hey, it's done, it's over, move on, when there's a doubt that our elections aren't being run right. And we can prove it, right? We can test it. It's not hard to do. And so, as you said before, what do we need? And what are we, what's stopping us? So right now, the ETA, we're growing in volunteers so that we can do this analysis and find more places to look. We've been directly emailing and reaching out to the state governments to try and get them to let us go and look themselves, work with the county, work with the state. And some places want to talk, some places don't. I mean, the places that don't want to talk, we're looking at getting residents and people who live there and helping do lawsuits, such as in Pennsylvania, where we had retained a lawyer, and we have plaintiffs who live in some of the counties and some of the precincts where we're finding concerns. What sucks is this isn't a quick fight. Everyone wanted like immediate results. We're finding it's going to be a slow fight, but once we have our hands on the votes, we'll know very quickly, hey, did this happen? Did this not? And then it comes down to how do we stop this happening in the future? For us specifically, we have a lot of people who are willing to kind of step up and connect with us and put us in touch, but it takes proof. And that's what sucks is we're running around doing the legwork until we have proof. And then maybe the news will talk about it. Then we get our meetings with some more powerful people who can help make change.
Yeah, go ahead. I see you, Big Sir.
I got a list.
Yeah,
right, let's go.
Ahead.
Do you give any credence to what was it, the rumors or allegations, whichever, take your pick, that the voting machines were using Elon Musk software or were tied to Starlink, or I can't remember the specifics, because at the time, remember, I was like some crazy fluid on conspiracy shit.
Yeah, I'll be honest. We are very hesitant to talk about the machines just because the main concern is you can be really wrong about the machines, right? Like there's so many, I'll be honest, I didn't understand, in my background in cybersecurity, and I understand, for the military side, signal communication, so radio, satellite, computer, these are all different, ways and platforms we communicate. What sucks is, it's really hard to know exactly what the machines are doing or how you could compromise them. And as you said, it gets into the realm of conspiracy really quick when you start talking about the machines. So we do avoid talking about some of the more out left field stuff. But I will say, as we mentioned before with the major tabulator brands, we are finding there are cellular modems in the largest tabulator brand used throughout Pennsylvania, I believe. And there's a modem in those tabulators because I believe they're digitally sending off the vote totals to their server or whatever. It does it is a concern, because if you were to have the means to connect to the machines by cellular, yeah, you could potentially, do a lot to them. So,
why do you think that Democrats just kind of rolled over and showed their yellow belly? I saw, and I highlighted the comment, I can't remember who said it, but it was essentially, the gist was they spent 4 years saying the elections are totally fair and free and can't be tampered with. And it was very hard for them to stomach the idea of backing away from that. Do you think that has anything to do with it, or do you think there's something else going on?
I do think, if anything, they may have kind of put themselves in a position that they'd look silly, saying, hey, we were potentially wrong for the last 4 years, that our systems are not as free and fair and secure. As you said, that was a major talking point, is, hey, you couldn't have done this anyways. So that might play into it. I will say this, and this is what frustrates me as we've dug deeper and made things public. 2016, there were reports of Russian influence and interference in our elections. Like, it was public knowledge. There was multiple reports and multiple government releases about it. There was illegal releases about it, where there was and I believe a Navy soldier that she had released classified intelligence about Russian plans and actual attempts to influence our elections in 2016, and she was court-martialed and in prison for it. It was reality winner. So going back to 2016, there was real concerns about our election infrastructure being targeted then. And that's frustrating to see, because who would have, that knowledge at the time? There are some new stuff we're coming up and finding now where in Florida alone, the voting registration databases for 2 different counties were potentially breached by Russian hackers as well. And there was Russian malware found on their servers. So we're already seeing. Whoa. Yeah, go ahead. Stop. Yeah, people don't know about that.
I was refraining from cussing, so I promise you. The fuck are you talking about, bro?
Yeah. So I'll have to get you the direct link. I can probably find it here in a second. I have it. But Russia had apparently installed malware on 2 different counties in Florida for their voter registration database. And why is that important? Well, if I know who votes, if I know who could vote, and I had a way to add in votes, there you go. I can vote for people who didn't vote. That's a huge concern. So yeah, let me find you the link real quick. I'll put that in the chat, and then you can blast that out. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like this that people just aren't aware of. And the issue is, to be honest, there's only 2 types of, there's a quote, there's only like 2 types of companies. There's companies that have been hacked or infiltrated or, had a cybersecurity threat. And then there's companies that don't know that they've been hacked. And I think we're sitting in that second spot right now where, if you don't look, you don't know. All right, I'm pulling the link up here for you.
It's back to you, Sarge. Yeah, I want to make sure that my original statement isn't taken out of context before I get flamed by my own audience here.
Oh, it'll be taken out of context, I'm sure. The memes will flow.
You might even end up on Libs of Shit Talk,
right?
Or some other fringe platform.
Well, that would be great. What I don't want to be is used as a Fox News collaborator. Like I said, I don't blame the media for being weary about talking about this until there's proof. But I want to make sure that doesn't mean that every single bigwig and every single, demographic and every single state house and federal government shouldn't be talking to you, and as publicly as possible at all times, right? Like, yeah, sure, MSNBC shouldn't just pick this up, but you should be. I mean,
there should be some backroom meetings, right?
People calling you, right? There should be people calling you right now.
Well, so I put in the chat, I put in the link there. That is the second county that they had identified for 2016. Florida County hacked by Russia in 2016. Yep, they had Russian malware on their voter registration systems. That's one of the two counties we know about. As I said, you only know if you look. What we would like going forward, we have reached out time and time again. We've sent direct letters. I have made phone calls to some of the secretaries of state in the counties in the states that we are concerned about. I have reached out to Pennsylvania time and time again. So I think what we're looking at doing now is, I'm going to keep making this public knowledge. I'm going to keep, the ETA as a whole, all of our volunteers are going to keep putting out reports. And we have Dr. Walter Meban now, leading U.S. election fraud expert, is saying the same things we're saying. So hopefully that'll help us break through and have these sit-down meetings. I will go to Pennsylvania. I will go to Philadelphia, wherever the Secretary of State is, Secretary of the Commonwealth is right now, and I will sit in his office and I will talk to him face to face. I am not afraid of doing these things, but we are having a hard time getting them to take us seriously. And I think that's the problem, is you can't keep burying your head in the sand if this is a real thing. And it doesn't hurt us to find out. It doesn't hurt us to go and do these audits, because if we're wrong, the votes count, everything's good. If we're right, it is a big deal. And the ETA will pay for the time or the energy or whatever. So there's no real excuse here besides just being afraid or not being aware.
Just one point of correction. I believe the Secretary of State's office is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not Philadelphia.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure.
See, this is why you're not getting through, going to the wrong city. Yeah.
That's why we need people who live in these areas, right? On the ground.
I would suggest, by the way, if you've not already, and you may have, reaching out to Governor Josh Shapiro. He may not be able to help, but he has been very receptive to listening to concerns that have been brought to him, at least in the past, about major statewide issues and suspicions of things. And he's been at least willing to sit down and discuss these things. Obviously, can't speak to, I'm not part of, I don't work for him, I'm part of his staff, I don't have any connection inside there, so I can't speak to where things are right now. I can vouch that in the past he's been very willing to at least entertain ideas.
Yeah, we did originally kind of send out a bunch of contacts and emails, but I think it's worth doing another round with everything we have now, and with Dr. Walter Meban's support as well. I think that's something worth sitting down. That might get their interest. So that is that's on our next steps. Is we've launched our dashboard. We put out the Dr. Walter Meban report saying, hey, there's I'll be honest, when we went to him and we spoke with him, I didn't expect him to do that analysis and be like, yeah, hey, here it is. And I will say that he has done analysis for other states as well that are not public, and for multiple, for the entire state, every county. Pennsylvania, we only did the 3 counties. We have the other counties now that we're going to follow up with. But we will have reports coming out soon looking at other swing states, all of the counties, and like telling you how many votes could have been messed with or just anomalous. That is going to hopefully be a big deal as well.
A associate of mine by the name of John Folser did an extensive statistical analysis on the 2016 election around irregularities within the votes from that election. And I remember that it was a very uphill battle to get anyone to take him seriously, anyone to read anything he was trying to publish, trying to put out there. So I do not envy you pushing the boulder up that particular hill.
It's very hard to put into like layman's terms the concerns. As you said, that's something funny about Dr. Meban's work is his working paper it's almost like reading code. Like that is the level of statistics he does. So the ETA, my job, everyone's job now is to kind of summarize everything, make it, hey, what's the bottom line up front? Why does this matter? What can we do about it? I will say for 2016, we spoke with and interviewed, and we have a video up on our YouTube channel, Election Truth Alliance on YouTube. We have a video with Dr. Beth Clarkson. She has a PhD in statistics. She was the head of the University of Wichita's statistics department, I believe. She worked at their naval. She worked at one of their institutions. So, she was the chief statistician at the University of Wichita. She's retired now, but she had in 2016 done her own statistical analysis and raised concerns then local to her, and that was in Kansas. So we did an interview her. She told us a little bit about her concerns. We found her paper. We were seeing the same concerns in 24 at the time, and she did review our work then and said, hey, this is what I saw back in 2016, but not as aggressive with the potential statistical vote changing and everything. So we do have concerns going back to 2020, going back to 2016. We will be releasing reports for 2020 soon, doing kind of a more of a large scale report looking at multiple states, counties for 2020 data, 2022 data, which is important, and 2016 data. My last little bit about that, we've highlighted the presidential race in all of our data. We've looked at the presidential race. We've done the same analysis that we've just highlighted for the Senate races, for the other down ballot races, the partisan races. We are seeing the same concerns, but we are seeing around, on average, 3% more manipulation at the presidential level, potentially. And that's what's causing a noticeable drop off. But we're still seeing like the Senate races are showing that correlation for the Republican candidate getting more and more votes at higher turnout. We're seeing this in Nevada. We're seeing this in Pennsylvania. We are seeing this in North Carolina and other swing states and other non-swing states. It brings up a really good question. And that is, if you've been manipulating elections for two... Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like you're about to go to the same question that I was about to say.
Here's the question. So I've had this asked. If you've been manipulating elections for 2 or 3 elections now, and the intermediary elections between them, and you've been doing this for your party for so long, does that, it brings up the question of, are there people in positions of state and federal authority right now that were not potentially elected, right? And that is the concern. We're seeing that time and time again. We're seeing, is the current majority in Congress potentially influenced by these machines going back 2-3 elections? That's a big deal, because that puts us at a really interesting and a bad position, to be honest.
Big Saw, let's get back to your list, because I know you have a list of them, but
yeah.
If people feel right now that the vote can't be trusted, then how do we restore faith in the election process to where people will go out and vote next time?
Yeah, it comes down to better audits. It comes down to better accountability. As I said, a lot of people don't trust the audits right now. They don't trust who's doing the audits. So that's one of the other reasons why the ETA, I helped found it with Lily and Jive, is There's not a lot of other like independent organizations that are looking at our elections. It's either the government, and the government's like, yeah, everything looks good, but did you look? And then there's like only 2 or 3 other smaller organizations, but they don't do statistical analysis like we do. And that's Smart Elections and Audit Elections USA, and there's citizens oversight as well. They do a little more targeted. They go in and look at the counties. So no one else before us was really sitting down and taking the time to do the statistics, do the widespread impact. And this is something we want to keep doing. We want to keep putting out reports. We want to keep looking at upcoming elections and making sure if there are concerns that are raised and they get investigated, because that'll bring back people's confidence. Is if you have multiple different independent groups looking at it saying, hey, this looks good, and we spot checked and we did our better audits. And that should hopefully help.
So if the election was certified, and let's say that there is a smoking gun somewhere in the data, or even better, in addition to the data, you find, some type of coding or signal or whatever that shows the actual tampering, showing that the thing was rigged.
Right.
What then? Like, if the election has been certified, is there a way to uncertify it or to challenge it, even though it's now months after the fact?
It's a great question, and I'll be honest, no one really knows. This would be a first, like constitutionally and legally. Would we have legal standing to challenge the election? Oh yeah, like it doesn't, like it's very clear cut. The Constitution and state laws dictate. Each state is supposed to be able to run their own election. So if we show criminal election fraud and the outcome was significantly changed, it's a constitutional crisis, because you literally just had a bunch of voters that got disenfranchised. And then the states themselves would be good plaintiffs to, go for like federal lawsuits. So yeah, you could do all kinds of things. You could take it straight to the Supreme Court.
Problem is there's no legal actual recourse set out after that.
There's not.
I think your camera turned off again, Doug.
Yeah. That's a great point. Is there's nothing in writing, and there's nothing in constitutional or legal law that says what must happen. That's why I said, at worst, we're focusing on not using the machines again and using, hand count going forward for our elections, or we're challenging at a federal level the current administration, which would be unique. And there's never been anything like that before. Even going back to the Civil War as an example, that's the closest thing you would have is a bunch of the states said, hey, I don't agree with what's going on. I'm going to do my own thing. That's the concern. But I will highlight this. People don't understand kind of how our country works and what our Constitution gives us. What I at least take a little bit of comfort in is that we're really just 50 states in a trench coat, right? The federal government has as much power. To be honest, the federal government has as much power or as little power as the states give it. Mm-hmm. Without funding, all they really have is the military. So that's a big thing, is if all of the states collectively get together and are, the state attorney generals are all, working and pushing a federal lawsuit for election fraud, it is a big deal. And it would go to the Supreme Court. And who knows what the results or the outcomes would be. One simple result, honestly, would be trying to have a runoff or like a re-election, run the election again. That would be a recourse. So there's all kinds of avenues. We don't know what would happen, but it can't get in the way of us taking action. A lot of people want to say, hey, I don't think this could work, or I don't know how it would work, so I'm not going to do it. That's not the right answer. You have to try.
Okay. So your background is in, of course, computer tech, information technology, and as opposed to just cybersecurity. I say that specifically because you probably would have a better idea than me as to how long potentially have we been compromised. Because I'm 100% sure it's not just 2016. Since when do you know of, or can you estimate that we have had IT incorporated into our counting and our balloting systems? And how long do you think, how long has it been since we've been at least trying to be hacked by bad actors, in your assessment?
That's an excellent question. We don't have at this point enough data to truly say how far back, but I can tell you the furthest back incident that we know of, and that actually is 2004 in Ohio, and that was the Stephen Spoonamore. He's I think he was a resident computer expert, and he brought up concerns of they were potentially having a man-in-the-middle attack where, kind of like what we do, we were sending off data. In 2004, he had real concerns of the machines being manipulated. At that case, a man in the middle, like between the voting machines or whatever it was. There was a whole legal battle, and they didn't prove it fully, but it was pretty much everyone who was involved pretty much was like, yeah, this has likely happened, and was a concern. That's the earliest actual example we have. But I can say, if we look at how far back the machines go, we've been using the machines for a very long time. They've changed brands, they've changed types. But theoretically, if you had some groups that really wanted to get their hands on this, any type of digital voting could be manipulated if you're not doing the right type of audits. So 2004 is the earliest we know of. I will say we'll be reviewing some data going back to early 2000s for Iowa soon. We do have our hands on it. We are looking at it. There are concerns in Iowa going pretty far back as well.
Could you track when you were talking about the oldest case that we know of? I've been studying a lot of Civil War history and the aftermath of the Civil War, going all the way up into the early 1900s, because a lot of those guys that fought in the war were still alive, and they were very, advanced in their years and whatnot. But 1898 in North Carolina, there was widespread vote tampering that helped to usher in Jim Crow. So I'm curious, way out of left field, since you were talking about the earliest case that you know of, you think you could go back to 1898 and look at it?
So, as you said, we were referencing the digital votes, but so here's the fun thing is the type of analysis we're able to do, or anyone is able to do now, based off the work of the experts in Europe. If we have enough data, yes. If we have,
holy shit, yeah.
If we have precinct level data with voter turnout going back to the beginning of time, we can look and we can say, hey, is there a concern? Is there potential manipulation? Is there non-human voting behavior? And that's the thing. They don't want us. They don't want us to have the data. They want to make it hard. They can go back to Constantinople, or however you pronounce it, early times, Roman times. But what's fun to me is we've been doing the analysis that we've been publishing by hand up to this point, where now our next big step is working on making machine learning, AI, if you will, using AI, programming it and developing it to do it itself, and giving you more accurate estimations, and then making that a widespread thing too. People have already done this before us, but it's not held up. So that's kind of one of our next projects is we want to give you the tool so that if whatever happens, you can do it yourself. You turn on the program, you put the data in, and you're good to go. And we have been hunting for data going back as early as possible, and we will continue to highlight it. So all we need is the data, and we can tell you there is some caveats. There needs to be a lot of data, like if it's by county or precinct. If you only give us like 5 precincts, we're not really going to be able to say what's going on. But we look at the whole county, we look at the whole state. And if we have the data, we can do the same analysis.
In your objective look at everything that you've seen so far, how much of it has been, how much of it looks like it's been Republican side, and how much of it looks like it's been on the Democratic side?
So for the 24 election, the 22 election, and the 2020 election, from all the data that we have looked at and run an analysis on so far, across the swing states and other swing states, we are seeing, we've actually not yet found any manipulation benefiting the Democrats so far, across those three different election types. It's almost always benefiting the Republican candidates.
Almost always, or always?
It's, from what we've seen, always benefiting the Republican candidates. I would like to find.
Talk. You won't say it.
Yeah, I would like to find.
Me too.
And, yeah, I'd like to publish. But so far, we have not found significant statistical evidence of election fraud benefiting the Democrats going back at least to 2020. And I did see in the chat some people were asking a little bit more about the AI stuff. The way we want to develop the AI, they're like, hey, does AI hallucinates, or it comes up with something stupid, or it tells you to put glue on your pizza? Well, yes, that's all good points. What we're actually looking at making is we're taking pre-programmed AI, and all it's doing is it's running different statistical analysis that we're telling it how to run, or it's already programmed to run, and we're just telling it, hey, this is what more normal election data looks like. How does everything else compare? That's all we're doing. So it's not like your fancy language chatbot that starts saying really weird things after being exposed to the internet. That's not what we're developing here. I'm sure you've seen things like that. Yeah. All right. Any other big questions or anything? Any other final things? We'll probably wrap up here soon.
So toward the start of the video, I mentioned like everything has been flip-flopped, and like, I now find myself not necessarily adopting viewpoints, but being less critical of things that I used to make fun of. So along that same line, what do you say when, like, there's probably a tendency for people who are either in the middle or even people who are on the other side of this to say, oh, you guys just sound like the 2020 election deniers.
We get that a lot. So,
which now doesn't seem so crazy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I will say the main thing is we get accused of being like the 2020 election deniers. I will highlight some distinct differences between the work we're doing today and what was done then. We're doing analysis of data. So you're not cyber ninjas.
We're
not cyber ninjas. Don't get me started.
There's a deep cut.
That's another episode. That's a long conversation. But I will highlight this. We're grassroots, right? We're normal people. We have our backgrounds in our various fields. Mine is more cybersecurity focused and data focused, but I work with statisticians. I work with people with masters in data analysis, and it's come down to peer reviewing our work and making our work public. It's not like, oh, I have it and you can't see it. You can do it yourself. Here it is. This is real math. This is real science. And we're not wanting to storm the Capitol. We're not wanting to do harm to others. We're wanting to validate first. And that's the difference, right? Is 2020, the election was stolen. Here's proof, but you can't really see it or you can't understand it. Let's go. Top down.
Storm after the validation.
Yeah. No. So the difference here is this is bottom up, right? This is normal people. We're not being told by anyone in a position of influence. This is what's happened. We're saying, hey, here's our analysis. Here's our concerns. Here's other experts. So that's what's important. And we want to validate. We want to verify first.
I got one last thing for me personally.
Yeah.
Do you have the slides on deck? Can we go to one of those slides again?
Yeah, what do you want to see?
I want to go to the one where they're showing the cluster, the heat map. Okay, the heat map, and
which county?
to the next one. Next one. Next. Yeah. Okay. So this is the one where I said only because you're so gigantically, ridiculously, overtly corrupt would you get something like that. Like you don't care if people find out type thing, right? Whether you instead of a comment, you get a reverse comment.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So instead of just,
but I want to also show. Look at Uganda.
Yeah.
So I have a one of my friends has a master's in history, and he's an educator, high school, and I believe he had some college, whatever he teaches. And he would also talk to me about how different of a corruption Uganda is because it's so in your face and flagrant. I find it.
You have examples?
Well, I'm not him. I'm not that history guy. Okay. But I find it a strange correlation that the one where it's pretty much known that the corruption is less policed, right? The corruption is less policed is where you look at that similarity, and I was just I didn't think
blown away, right?
When I said it, right?
Yeah. Oh, and here, excellent point too is I would imagine in Uganda they probably just vote physically, right? I'll have to look how they're running their elections, but I bet they vote by location or mail or whatever it is. So you go in, you cast your vote. What's awesome about the analysis we're doing is you could be changing things digitally, you could be changing things physically. It's going to show the same concerns. So, right, if you're voting in a town or a city in Uganda and you come in and you have a bunch of people just have extra votes and just stuff the ballot box, that's more of what that would cause, right? That's what would cause that shape. But we don't do it physically here, right? You do it digitally, and you can get away with doing a lot because unless someone checks, you could stuff your heart out, and it being digital, no one would know. So that's an excellent point. You would need to pay or have people go and physically do it in Uganda or the US if we didn't vote digitally. And that's the thing is it's actually a little easier if you do your homework and you gain access to the systems. You could do a lot. Here's a really important note is digitally speaking, you could change the outcome of an election to whatever you want it to be. It doesn't matter how many people show up to vote. It doesn't matter how popular a candidate is. You can just digitally change the votes. The only thing that matters is is the more you do, the more likely you could be to get caught. And we're finding that our audits just aren't doing the work to catch digital manipulation. And if this has been going on for 3 elections now, they've got it down to a science. All right. Sorry, that was a lot to throw on you guys.
Some heavy stuff.
It's the first time we've had a PowerPoint presentation on Sons of Liberty. Really? Not even in videos, live stream videos, anything. So
you know what? No one fell asleep, so already it's a better PowerPoint presentation than most.
That was my thing. You're lucky. As I said, 40 slides. I was like, they can probably handle 10, even 10. You guys were starting to check out after a little bit, so I was like, all right, let's get some. Nah, I'm messing with you. But yeah, it was awesome. I hope you. I'd say we're here to raise awareness, right? We're here to make people. They should start asking questions. You need to start asking questions. I would love help reaching out to the state government. Pennsylvania, we have a audit advocacy toolkit on our website, and it has a script, and you can literally just call your reps. You can call the state AG or whoever it is. They may not answer, but you can leave them a voicemail and say, "Hey, I'm concerned. Here's these guys and their data." We just want to raise pressure at this point, right? We want people engaged. We want people talking about this, and we want people calling and reaching out to their representatives so that they're really aware that this is a thing, and hopefully they'll work with us.
And we'll know everything's getting close when folks like us start disappearing to El Salvador.
Let's say. Can you email me the link to that with like a little blurb about that, because I'd like to
We can
on
get that
one of the
shot.
next videos
Yeah.
that I do, I will absolutely plug that.
Yeah, I can
And
give
that
you
way
a few
people
things.
can go and do like a little call to action, so to speak.
I saw my next thing is what can people do? What's the actionable move that they can do tomorrow?
Well, at this point, as we said, we're still doing our reach outs. We're still calling, emailing. I would be interested in probably some like future coordination where we may do like host physical events. We might, show up and have like a sit-in or something in some of these places to raise awareness. As I said, we only need to audit like one spot to open the door. It's a domino effect. We go to any one place where we're seeing these concerns statistically, we get an audit there. It either did or didn't happen, opens the door. So that might be something we pursue in the near future. But for right now, spread the word, right? Spread our videos, spread, this podcast, talk about the data, talk about the concerns, talk to your friends, family, which is funny because when I first started doing this work, my family was not happy. I'm from the South area. They vote a certain way, but they're not like super engaged. And I said, hey, I went to Washington, D.C., revealed my identity to talk about election fraud on a live stream with over 100,000 people watched it and saw it. And I helped make this organization. And the first thing they ask me is, are you not worried that we're going to get like people are going to show up at our house and disappear us? And I was like, well,
yes, I am.
That is a concern.
Yes.
All right. So
we got to do this.
On that note, since you said it only takes one to bust the door wide open.
Oh, here's a great question, Tim.
Your camera shut off again.
I'm eating.
What do you think my question is going to be, Doug? What do you think my question is going to be?
What is the one that we can look at that would be the best representation of something big?
You guys are on the same page.
You got it.
That
was going to be my question.
We do what we do, man.
I love it. Excellent question.
What he said.
Yeah, I would say any of those three counties in Pennsylvania is an excellent starting point. We have these are really more liberal counties too, so it stands out. Like Philadelphia would be huge. Any of those precincts. Erie County would be huge. There's a good amount of those precincts where we could go and get those, or Alagany, any of those three. And what's really interesting to me is like Nevada, we broke it down by like location, and it opened the door for us being like, hey, maybe this is a bigger thing because middle of Las Vegas for Nevada, for example, most liberal place in the state, it's Las Vegas. And you were having locations where for Trump was winning by like 20 or 30%, just in the middle of the city. And it was like, this is really weird to see. So any place that we've done it would be great. Nevada would be awesome, but Pennsylvania has like really nice physical ballots that we can go and look at. And they have a lot of problems for election day, right? A bunch of bomb threats, a lot of direct quotes. I know their Secretary of the Commonwealth and their governor, they actually pushed back in 2020, I believe. I think their Secretary of the Commonwealth pushed back in 2020 about election fraud claims then. So that means they at least are willing to look and say, hey, this is or is not a thing, which is different than just being like, yeah, sure, election fraud. So as I said, I'd love to sit down with Secretary of the Commonwealth and be like, hey, here's all of our stuff. We only need to go look one place.
All right. So what can we do, whether it's Sons of Liberty, Fam of Liberty, average Joe voter that watches this?
Yeah.
What do you think would be just spitballing, a rough outline, a rough draft of a rough outline on what do you think the first one or two steps could be?
Yeah, I think the first step, what we really want to do is we want to work with other organizations and be able to stay connected, right? So first step is staying connected. We have a newsletter for the ETA. We have our websites and stuff. You guys have your accounts. We want to be able to put out new stuff and put out new calls to actions as things change. So that's the first thing is connecting people, bringing people together. That strength in numbers, strength in power. And then that second step is for right now, like a really large targeted campaign to the state government would be huge, right? A mass 100,000 people are like sending emails or phone calling them for like a week, or we plan a day. That would be something very useful. As we plan an outreach day and we say, hey, on this day, everyone call these people and tell them about this and ask them to come to the table. That would be huge. I feel like that would get us a really solid yes or no. And then, we go from there.
I like it.
Let's do it.
I like
Fuck
that.
it. We ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll
I
have
like
to
that.
schedule a day and, we'll, as I said, we got that toolkit. So that'd be a good thing is we maybe, come up with a day, put it out to a bunch of groups. And then we say, hey, here's your script. You can talk about this. You can talk about that. Let's make sure they know, right? They can't say, hey, I didn't know about this. It's like, man, you got 1,000 people calling you for a day straight and you didn't know.
Yeah.
Let's not let them make excuses.
Big Sarge, did you move on to the cayenne pepper gummies there? Because
Right. I saw your face.
I saw that reaction.
All right. So
Oh, here we go.
Oh, we are at the special.
my wife picked up a thing of Mike and Ike's. Periodically, there's a
That's what we're calling them.
and I waited till the end for the lime green ones, and because that one I tried one right off the bat, and that right here, that sensation that you get when you put something down, it's like, yeah, that's what it is. So
Okay.
that's what I'm doing is I'm horking down a little bit of Mike and Ike's.
When the moth flies across your screen, that's when you know. All right, it's out. I'm out of here.
I feel like you could put that in like the words to when the moon hits your eye.
I was about to say when the moth flies across.
When the moth flies across the screen.
I couldn't make it rhyme. I ended it there. Wow, that was
just like that. The train
terrifying.
is off the tracks into the ditch,
Yeah.
rolling down the hill on fire.
Derailed.
Usually we're on to sex jokes by now. So my friend Nathan, you
I appreciate that we.
No one has offered to send someone feet pics.
Right.
No one has told a interesting story from Sarge's past.
Right.
We made all kinds of new. We set new records here tonight.
We'll have to have an ETA after dark at some point. I'm sure things will come up. we got to get something professional out first, and then we go from there.
I do have a question that I had from the beginning and lost it, and now I remember it.
Yeah.
The effect of things like these bomb threats. Say you never get, which will not happen because we're going to do this day of action, week of action. We're going to get a script, and Family Liberty will be making these calls, and so will everybody else on our network. But say you don't get any traction from this, and there's no big deal. There's not that much fraud as far as digital is concerned. How big of a factor?
Yeah, there's a good quote. A good poem there.
Anywhere, olive green. Very good. So what is the factor of the bomb threats, of Putin's misinformation campaigns, of divisive campaigns, of sending people home, like in Georgia, where these bomb threats had people there and then come home, and half of them couldn't go back again because they work and they have kids. And what, just on that alone, is that enough to? I mean, isn't that enough, or do you believe that would be enough to sway something in that direction, and sway an election, or sway sentiment, or at least sway, make people have to look twice? Like, how bad is that?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I don't talk about this a lot, but there are two things that immediately come to mind, and one is the social media campaigns that were attributed to Russia, are still attributed to Russia. We're talking Russian bot farms. We're talking, like, you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, and it's potentially not real people that are, it's bots programmed to engage in a certain way. spread misinformation, try and shift public opinion. That was going back to 2016. That was a real thing. I think the U.S. actually sanctioned Russia for a little bit because of that level of social media influence. I know that was huge back in 2016 because of the Hillary email incident that was aggressively pushed at the time. So social media is a huge tool.
That was back when we cared about potential leaks of security and whatnot. Now it's just another Tuesday with Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, when you cared about disclosing war plans in a signal chat, but that alone, the social media can have a huge impact. We were seeing this in Romania recently, right? Romania annulled their 24 election because they said, hey, the amount of like social media manipulation was a lot. That'll change people's opinions if they don't know it's real, right? If people don't know all of the stuff they're seeing online isn't real, it's not real people, that can have an impact. But what I want to highlight for the 24 election alone, what could have helped change the election? Are you familiar with Greg Palast's work? He is an investigative journalist. He talked about voter suppression. He talked about, I think his last number was somewhere in the 3 to 4 million range, maybe more, maybe less. I'll have to double check, where he talked about organized campaigns in Georgia and I think other states where they challenged the voting role, the right of people to vote. And they were going down lists of voters and challenging them. And it was like, are they black? Are they a minority?
Yep.
They challenged their votes, millions of votes. Yep. So that was just one of a bunch of different like things that could help change the outcome. And you put them all together. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yep.
Is thanks for coming, but they might not even need that. Like they're so in the southern states, like I mean, what is it? Alabama, their Supreme Court is like, bro, you can't just gerrymander for blackness. Like it's you have to at least act like there's another reason for making a state look like a fucking hula hoop. Like you got to give me something. Like they're so brazen with it. And Georgia, when they made that voter roll thing, I was on every week making sure, and I checked every week, and making sure that other people, if you're black or if you're Latino, if you have a last name, if your last name is, Valquez or whatever it is, like you make sure every single week you're checking it, and every single week we get hits every single week.
Well, I'll say this, and this is something that I kind of had to come to grips with, knowing all of the other voter suppression stuff that went on. The concern is if 3 or 4 million people got taken off the rolls and they did go vote and they were predominantly black or minority, that would have changed the outcome in those states. But if they were voting on election day or early voting and the machines are compromised, you could still cheat and win. The only way we're really seeing that you could impact the election directly is by mail-in voting, because it looks less manipulated across the board.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware, we were getting reports right after the election of people whose mail-in votes never got delivered, never got counted. People were telling us that their mail vote, they shipped their mail votes and it got taken to a separate state and then sent back to their state. And by the time it arrived, it was outside the window of counting. Ballot boxes for mail-in voting, where you drop off your ballots, were set on fire, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
USPS, I'll highlight this. USPS had some serious concerns where they mail-in voting is something like they had a vote process. They had letter processing machines, and we bring up concerns where USPS really seemed to slow down and lose mail-in voting every election season going back to 2020. So these are just a few things that you put them all together, absolutely will change the outcome of the election. But even then, if the machines are compromised and you can change the votes for all vote types, which is what we're starting to see. We're starting to see mail-in voting show concerns in the 24 election. We're starting to see early voting election day. If you can change every vote and the machines are doing it and you don't fix it or you don't find out, you'll never win an election again unless they want you to.
Right.
And so it has to be,
Big Sarge, can I respond to Rock's pile here? On the presentation, if you've seen what he said, may I?
What was that? Yeah, good.
No, I need. Yeah, maybe he doesn't want me to. I need to know if that's okay.
You talking about the? Oh, Jesus Christ!
I don't have to. I can wait.
How bad is it? How bad is it?
It's
maybe it's not necessary.
It's anti-Semitic shit that we didn't catch.
Okay, well, maybe not this time around. We just get rid of it.
Let me just go ahead and ban that person.
Yeah, but no, as I said, I appreciate you guys so much. This is awesome. I would love to do more and just have more formal or informal stuff. This is the tip of the iceberg for us. We got a lot of stuff coming out soon, a lot of concerns coming out soon, a lot of progress. So this was awesome, just kind of sitting down and talking through things and relaxing.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about it, and hope we have you back at some point. Updates on your progress.
Yeah, we definitely want to arrange something for like a call to action.
Yeah,
even if it's one day, we can do one day, one place, and see what we can make happen.
Hey, I'll drive to Philadelphia or Harrisburg. I'll drive to Harrisburg. We'll have a cookout somewhere one day and find some people. But no, I'll send you some stuff. Let's start simple, right? Let's get it out there. Let's do some digital stuff. But
we could send Matt. You could link up with Matt, who's somewhere in that area.
Yeah,
and then you could live stream directly to.
Yeah, we could do. Yeah, we could have a little sit down somewhere public or at a public place, and we can do all kinds of things. This is my job now. That's something some people are aware, some people are not. I did give up my cybersecurity job prior to the election to do this, to help run this organization. I say give up, but I was fired to do this because the reputational risk for my line of work. Yeah. So this is my day job now, and I care a lot about it. I'll be honest, I never thought that I would wake up and work like 18 hours most days and like it, but that's what this is really important to me. So all right.
Something. If you do something that you love, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly. And I love our country, man. Like, I love our people, and that's why we're doing this fight. That's why the ETA is going to keep doing this. Is at the end of the day, what matters is it's not our country, it's not America, it's the people. That's what matters. And I want you guys to be taken care of, and I want your votes to count, and that'll go a long way, I think, to helping improve our country.
Any way we can help. I like to see this action. I like to see that call to action happen. Thank you so much, my friend, for being there.
Thank you so much for your time. You guys are awesome. We'll follow up. We'll be in touch.
Awesome.
All right. So I want to thank Nathan for being on the show and bringing the first ever PowerPoint presentation to Sons of Liberty videos, website, social media, live stream, any of it.
And honestly, against all odds, it wasn't a safety brief.
Yeah, and it didn't have clip art in it, like the little old guy who's like, pointing to the light bulb or whatever. Because that's what I would have done.
Next time, we'll throw in some animations just for you.
And there it is.
All right.
The rails were here.
Oh, there we go.
I got a special announcement. Monday, we're going to do a Memorial Day live stream. We're going to have some veterans on the live stream. Try to get some of our admins and staff who are veterans, and we are going to link up with some guys from Valor Media. We've had Ken Harbaugh and Bobby Jones on the show before, so we're going to have some veterans from Valor Media Network. And then Tuesday, 27th, we're going to have a guest, Bernard Taylor, who's running for office, the representative seat in Florida District 21 for 2026. And if you have not seen Bernard Taylor, Bernard Taylor is a paramedic and a fireman, and he works out. I'll just say that. I don't want to
Sarge has got a little man crush.
Oh, man crush.
A little bit.
Objectify. I don't want to objectify him, but god damn.
I just want to touch it.
Just saying. Also, his social media is sharp as fuck. Like his social media is a thing to behold. If you go check him out on Threads at the very least, because that's where I found him, and his stuff is pretty good. So, starting in about June, I think I'm going to be heading out to Texas and going out to Beaufort, South Carolina to do a couple of the episodes that we crowdfunded for the Civil War thing. And we should be rolling those out probably July or August, I think. And then
if I can jump in here real quick, sir.
What you got?
Appreciate you guys so much. I'll let you guys kind of wrap up and do your continuations. It was awesome, and I gotta step out. I appreciate you guys. I look forward to doing more with you guys. You're like, this is awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Absolutely.
Thanks
for being here.
It's good to see people like yourself who your hearts are in the right place. Like, that's huge. It's really easy to kind of lose focus on how many people do care and are checked in. And I hope to grow and keep people and give them hope, give them a purpose. So thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. That's actually going to be, that was all I had, really. It's just going to be starting to roll out some of the stuff from our crowdfunder in hopefully August with some quality episodes.
And now that he's gone, Roxpow, fuck your mother.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck is this person going on about? Like, they're like, the Jews are evil. And I'm like, are you fucking for real?
Sorry about that.
We got to work on getting our moderators back up and running in the live stream. We have them.
I don't think they fell asleep tonight. They're on that nonsense.
They casualties of PowerPoint.
Yeah. We passed out. They're sitting there waiting to hear about their safety vests and who screwed up what with the ladder this week. And
all right. Well,
your middle finger must be touching the seam line of your pants. Slightly
that's going to be our time.
So as not to incur heat stroke. Sorry.
Drink water. Change your socks. Paperclip guy. All right. That is our time for tonight. Thank you, everybody who tuned in, and we will see you in the comment sections, or we'll see you Monday for the Memorial Day live stream, or Tuesday for the live stream. Woo. 2 claps and a Rick, motherfucker. Woo!